Hello, Night Nation. I'm Trylko from the Sons of UCF, joined by Eric Lopez of the Black and Gold Banneret. Welcome to another live edition of Around the Kingdom. Elo, hello.
Trace, we're on to the Scott Frost era. And coming up on the fastest live Around the Kingdom show around, we're going to talk about Scott Frost and perhaps some of the Frost warnings that come that may prevent a sequel from being as successful as the original. Did Terry Mahajer win this search? Plus, what's a good kind of clothing for some Frost advisory weather on September 20th? Perhaps some hoodie. If Bill Belichick could come to the bounce out. More on that and much more coming up on this unique, live, fastest UCF show around the kingdom.
Elo, before we get going, let's welcome in the third member of our team. He is Adam Eaton from the Sons of UCF. Keeps an eye on the clock, keeps us on our toes. And Adam, once again, are we engaging the audience during this live edition?
Gentlemen, we most certainly are. Welcome back to all. So we have a segment that's just for you out there. So get in the comment section. Let us know what you want to hear. I'll be monitoring that. And when that pops up, we will have these guys here answer your questions unprompted. So you can play a part and Around the Kingdom here. Just let us know what you want to talk about, and I'll put it on screen for you.
All right. Talk to you soon, Adam. All right, Elo, vibes. How you feeling now about the post-Gus Malzahn era? Gus getting the presser in Tallahassee as the new OC. A little more than a week and a half removed from leaving UCF. And Night Nation, you have Scott Frost back and some familiar faces along with him. Elo, Mike. Live.
Still wild. I'm still shaking my head. I was swearing. That's still when you brought up Gus. That's why I did not unmute myself, because this is still crazy, right? This is crazy. If we would have, who would have predicted this 10 days ago that Gus would be in a presser in Tallahassee as an OC at Florida State while Scott Frost is back for a second time as UCF head coach? I think it's still surreal. It's wild, but you know what? The vibes are good, man. It's fun. It's nostalgic, yes. But I think there's a lot of intrigue that I don't think would have been existed in this program with any other head coach right now other than Scott Frost.
What a move. It flipped the script. I mean, there was dread in Night Nation, no doubt, in UCF athletics, thinking ahead to a 2025 football season, athletics season with Gus Malzahn, and now renewed energy, right? Donations, they're going good. Ticket sales, season tickets, everybody has a lot of enthusiasm and a big move by Terry Mahajer. Hey, you know, it's all the rage, though, bringing back a coach that had formerly been at your place, West Virginia, bringing back Rich Rodriguez.
Of course, they have to copy us. We started a trend, Trace. Bring back coaches from the past. But look, it's been amazing to see a lot of most, not everybody, but the overwhelming majority really excited and intrigued by this, right? And how can you not be, Trace? There's so many interesting. See, I almost swore again. Amazing plot lines in this. It's really amazing emotion here, and will it work or not? We'll discuss that coming up. But it is surreal, and people have stepped up from the donors. Fan base is excited. The word is surreal, still surreal to me. But you know, folks, this is what you get when it's live. Sometimes I almost swear. Of course, Scott Frost had his press conference on Friday or Sunday night. We were there, Trace. We were there at the Scott Frost presser. What was your big takeaways from Scott's press conference there?
It's funny to sit next to you is one of my takeaways, because when he would say something, he'd jab me like, did you catch that? That could be a topic for Around the Kingdom right there. What it said.
We might need overtime to break all that one down. Yeah.
I thought he was authentic, unscripted, and answered the questions and kept expectations in check. Hey, don't expect an undefeated season. There's work to be done here. He had the right note of humor. He teased some things that would be coming, i.e. McKenzie Milton. And I thought he won the presser as, the big topic going into this one. Of course, odd time on a Sunday night and a mix of media and donors, all of that a little bit more rushed than they would have preferred, as Terry Mahajer needed to be at Big 12 meetings beginning Monday. But overall, Scott Frost won the presser, won the fan base over with his return.
Well, I speak on behalf of the UCF media, saying that that's hopefully the last Sunday night UCF media football availability we have ever again, unless there's a bowl game or a playoff involved. All right, let's get that out of the way, right? Trace, you're with me on that.
I'm with you 100% on that.
You know what blew me away was not even what his words were, but more importantly, how everybody around him. Think of all the there was a ton of donors there, Trace, just swarming him and him shaking his hand and happy to see him back. It was surreal to see that, him unite people like that. And also, like you said, he had a great sense of humor, but he was very honest. There was a point there where he said about UC fast and everything. It's like, well, you know what? We're not going to do it exactly like we did it the last time. He learned some things from the past. Maybe you don't have to go fast all the time. So he's basically telling everybody he's going to take some time, and he wants to develop players, Trace. That's something, and I thought a little bit of a shot at the previous staff, maybe indirectly, about, hey, we're not going to just build teams off the portal each year. I thought that was fascinating.
So it begs the question, Elo, one much debated as this news broke over the weekend. Will this hire work? Why could it work for UCF?
Listen, I would argue over the last couple of hours, this hire just improved by nationally immensely as far as risk is concerned compared to some of the other hires we just took place. But listen, here's why it works. Because Scott wants to be here, number one. He has a passion to be here. He speaks the UCF language, Trace. I would argue he's the closest thing to an alum coaching at UCF in football from that standpoint, because people can relate to him. I think he can relate to the players. The players would run through a wall for him. I think he knows what it takes, and I think he wants to coach here, even with any limitations that we've talked about, Trace, that they have from a resource standpoint. While other coaches are like, those resources are not good enough for me, Scott's like, oh, that we're good with that. We'll win. We'll find a way to win with that. That's why I think it could work.
There is certainly a romanticism that surrounds him, right? Night Nation thinking, what if he had stayed? Remember that talk? He could become UCF's Bobby Bowden. At 49, nearing 50, right? Maybe this is his final landing spot. And I sensed a hunger in him. I asked him if there was a chip on his shoulder, and he said that he has something to prove, that he's a good coach, and he wants to show the nation that he's a good coach. Maybe, just maybe, he will become UCF's Bobby Bowden.
Plus, I think the 2024 Scott Frost appreciates this job more than 2015 Scott Frost did. I think he's embracing this, and I think you're right. He's got a second form life. He's got a family now. He's got the kids. He mentioned about how he wants his kids to see him coach. This man's inspired, and he's got a lot of people around him that are inspired because he's here. And I think that is something you can't teach. He's the only UCF head coach, Trace, that I would argue that all the players and fans feel the same way about him. Every other UCF coach is a polarizing, either players don't like him or fans don't like him. He's the one that can connect with both sides. Pretty impressive. And that's why it could work. But he did have that stop at that place he won't refer to in the presser at the last place. Didn't go so well at his previous home. So my question, Trace, is this, why won't this work out? And do you have concerns that it won't work out?
2017 was lightning in a bottle, right? You had to have the right quarterback in McKenzie Milton. I know the question has come up about whether Gus may have been unlucky. I've never really thought the 2024 Knights were unlucky, but there was a lot of luck that made 2017 work as well. And it's hard to put that all back together again. And so, there's talk of sequels. You wrote on it this week. We're going to talk about that, whether the sequel can be equal to, better than the original. He can't replicate 2017. And I thought it was wise of him to say, don't expect that. And I think Night Nation will give him, some room to rebuild this team. But until they shake 2017, that maybe a 9-3 season, especially in the Big 12, can be good enough. I think those expectations are going to be sky high. Can he strike again, lightning in a bottle like 2017, and really build something here and be here for the long haul? I think that's going to be a question we won't have the answer for a number of years yet.
I think the question is, can he still evaluate players like he did here the first time? But even more important, keep those players here. It's one thing to bring them in, but in this landscape, you can lose a player in a year or two, i.e. Randy Pittman, who just took off, left for the portal. That's the challenge he's going to have, is the players. It's one thing to build in and develop him and add to the portal, but can he keep them here long enough and make sure that not another school comes in and pays more money, which is what's going on in the sport right now. we talked UCF resources. That's going to be a key factor that he has to deal with. And he's not in the American. He's in the Big 12. There are no temples of the world here. How will his system work in the Big 12? I think it's still a big question.
Did UCF become the temple of the Big 12
let's hope not.
In 2024? But it helps as the nostalgia tour continues to roll out McKenzie Milton as the new quarterback coach. Scott mentioned it, hinted at it on Sunday that McKenzie, number 10, might be back in the mix. Certainly a fan favorite, and interesting to see him make that jump now from Josh Heupel's staff in Tennessee, offensive analyst, to quarterback coach. But that seems like a good role for McKenzie Milton.
How about the fact that in the last 3 years as quarterback coach, we've had Darren Hinshaw and McKenzie Milton? Like, what are the odds of that, having back-to-back alums coaching here at UCF? That's pretty cool. Listen, that was the obvious question everybody asked, right? And even Scott joked about it in the presser when he got that number 10 jersey. And he's like, I didn't wear number 10. Maybe there's somebody we know here that can, could use that. So clearly this was in the works. And I think for McKenzie, this was always a destination here for him. And, it was pretty cool to see that video of him hugging Scott Frost and reuniting with him. I mean, that's what it's about. So, some people might question, hey, is this, is this a good hire and everything? I think it is. First of all, he's played the position. And second of all, who better knows how to, play the role of quarterback at UCF with the pressure that comes with that than McKenzie Milton. So I think it's a good start.
Hire Tuesday of the offensive coordinator, a lot happening in a short period of time. Steve Cooper, recently an offensive analyst at Boise State that finds itself in the playoffs, 4 years at Nebraska on Scott Frost's staff. How did that hire strike you?
Not a surprise. He's connected to Frost in the past. I know some people questioning that. What that tells me is that Scott's going to call plays, which is ironic because we just spent the last couple of years debating whether a head coach at UCF should be calling plays. We're right back to it, baby. But I have no problem with it because that's Scott's guy. And listen, I know people might, if you were expecting a big name, I'm sorry to disappoint you. According to USA Today, Trace, UCF second lowest assistant payroll pool of money. Only Houston lower. Will that change as the years go on? Maybe, but that's what you're working with as well. And so coaches are always going to hire somebody they're comfortable with. So not a surprise. It was a connection from the past. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if people like it. Hey, Terry Mahajer is the one that more importantly should like it or not. He made the hire. Big search for Terry Mahajer. We've addressed that. Was scrutinized for the entire week. Some lots of speculation of names. I think 15 to 20 names. He was very outspoken about the process even in the press conference. Trace, did he get this right at the end?
Yeah, and I think he won his portion of the presser and the Q&A, right? He doesn't do a lot of media of late, and you don't always have a window into what his thought process is, but he detailed that, confirming what had been talked about in some circles, that he has spoken to Scott Frost before. So I think it's interesting. To be a fly on the wall when they met last week to discuss the job. Certainly interesting to me that Terry Mahajer, you always get the sense that he wants to distance himself from the 2017 team. I'm not sure Gus was ever comfortable with those words inside the bounce house. And boy, 2017, front and center, back with Scott Frost. But fan base was turning on him because of Gus Malzahn, and now they feel favorable to Terry Mahajer again.
I think it was very favorable, and I think it was very stressful for him. He wanted to get this right. You could sense that in his voice. I was impressed by his presser portion there, Trace. I thought he was pretty defiant, took back some of the people criticizing about what UCF has and doesn't have. And he's like, people focus on what we don't have, but I want people that focus on what we do have and be strengthened that. I thought that was a jab at us. We've been talking about what they don't have. Remember, you've addressed it. Do you think it's a good job or not? He obviously passionately felt good. He even said he scratched out coaches that brought up the fact, how much money do you have as far as resources and everything? He said that was a scratch off if you're only interested in that. So I thought that was very revealing from that standpoint.
I would just say that's somewhat contradictory because he's also on record recognizing that men's basketball in particular is under-resourced in the Big 12. So you're going to be the little engine that doesn't have resources or what, but it's also his role and his job to push that messaging out. So we can criticize or critique and talk about positions like that, but it's up to him and messaging from UCF to push back on it. And he did so. And You'll have to draw your own conclusions as to the statement and as well the effectiveness of being under-resourced. I don't know that being just ahead of Houston is a good benchmark in the.
But he says his point is there's too much talk about that. You don't just automatically win with that. He used Iowa State as an example, who got to the Big 12 title game. So clearly, he mentioned culture. That's one of the reasons he hired Scott. Culture was a big thing to him, more so than hiring a coach that was more interested in the resources. I thought that was, interesting comments he made there.
All right, Elo, the sequel you wrote at Black and Gold Banneret, Scott Frost's return as Top Knight brings box office appeal back to UCF. Does the sequel here live up to, perhaps exceed the original run of Scott Frost?
To be determined. We don't know. But that's what's so exciting, Trace. I don't think any other head coach would have been this exciting. Certainly not Barry Odom. I mean, every time I look at him, I'm thinking,
certainly not Barry Odom.
No. I mean, by the way, he's making over $6 million at Purdue. What are you thinking, Purdue? You're paying George Costanza that much. That's a lot. Anyway, so here's the thing. I do think it is. I think there's an emotional attachment. There have been sequels that have worked before. Greg Schiano, the most recent at Rutgers. Terry Mahajer brought up movies. Our friend, Brian Murphy, brought up Top Gun Maverick. You've seen Top Gun Maverick, right, Trace?
Yes. Much better than the original.
So he agrees with you. I can't believe you actually saw that movie. I think you didn't see the movie.
I did see that movie. Not a lot of movies.
But I really do. But that was a movie that a lot of people didn't think would work, sequel, and it turned out to be Tom Cruise's biggest box office. I really think that's what it's going to be exciting. And I do think people will be more interested in the national scene on UCF just because of the Scott Frost story. I wrote in that article, the last 2 years was the lowest viewed UCF football seasons nationally since 2015. They did not even reach 1 million viewers. This was the lowest watched UCF football season nationally since 2015. We got to admit, Trace, and I know people will make excuses about time slots and everything. You know why you don't get the best time slots? Because you don't win enough and you're not interesting. And that's where this program is right now compared to where they were when Scott Frost left, which was drawing over millions of viewers to watch this team every week and being the conversation in the nation. So I think, yes, I think it can work, but that's what's so exciting. I think people are intrigued and they're going to root for it to succeed. Whether it does or doesn't, who knows?
Scott Frost's hire has certainly made UCF more interesting. It is a talking point for the broadcast crews in 2025. All right, time to bring back in Adam and our silly game segment. Adam.
Before we get there, gentlemen, the Cure Bowl matchup has been set December 20th, 12 p.m. It is going to be Jacksonville State versus Ohio. Interesting matchup for UCF fans. Parker Navarro, former UCF quarterback, plays for Ohio. Jacksonville State comes to the Bound Test next year, although they may have a new head coach. Either way, it is sure to be a great matchup. December 20th, Campbell World Stadium, 12 p.m. Get your tickets now. The matchup is always Orlando versus Cancer. You can get involved. Go to curebowl.com right now. Get your tickets. Go down. Support the bowl game. Have a great time. And everything goes to a great cause. Again, curebowl.com if you want your tickets to support that event. All right, gentlemen. This week, I've got an easy one. It's a fill in the blank. I've got a statement. I'm going to leave a section blank. You fill in the blank with the words or word that you think fits the best. I'll start with you, Eric Lopez. Randy Pittman leaving is blank.
Not a big deal. Very overrated. I got to tell you something.
Oh, wow.
Seriously. What did he do that was so special? People say, well, they didn't use him enough. You know what? He's going to a third school now. If he was so great, he hasn't done the production. I wish him well, but he's a me guy, as George O'Leary would say. I'm good.
I would say it is expected. I'm not surprised by it. I don't agree with Elo. I would have preferred to have had Randy Pittman over 24 and a half.
For how much, though? How much?
That is an interesting – and we're not privy to all that valuation that comes through on NIL. That is interesting because you have your professional clubs that decide – what the value is and what their salary situation is. And, UCF has decided that whatever he's asking for, they don't want to pay. But that may have more to do with the fact that they're at the bottom of the barrel towards the bottom and NIL funding too.
Well, we'll see what he does at the next spot.
All right, Trace, this one's for you. In the opening press conference, Scott Frost did not commit to an offensive style. His previous tenure was known as UCF Fast. So here's your question. UCF's new offensive moniker should be what?
UCF forward, whatever that means. Downhill running, forward passes.
Forward pass would be great right here.
Just move forward.
Okay. I'll take it. Eric Lopez, marketing genius, UCF what for the new moniker?
UCF Maverick. We're going to be a Maverick offense. Who knows what we could be? We could be fast one moment. We could be slow one moment. We're going to be Maverick in honor of Pete Maverick Mitchell.
UCF Forward, I think, wins that one. All right, Elo, last one for you here. Bill Belichick coaching at UNC is blank.
No.
Unbelievable. That is the most unlikely head coach ever to coach at the bounce house. That is insane. I'm not even convinced it's still going to happen. We'll see, but it's crazy. September 20th, Bill Belichick against Scott Frost. Scott Frost played for Belichick when he was a defensive coordinator with the Jets in 99. That thing is going to be surreal. I can't wait. I hope it's one of the most bizarre stories. I'll tell you this. I'm not sure which show would come here, College Game Day or NFL Countdown, but we might get one of those shows for that game.
It's a youth movement for North Carolina and opposing of Mac Brown. The transcript of the post-game press conference by Bill Belichick will fit on a napkin.
Is Bill Belichick the Rodney Dangerfield, like that movie, Old School, where he just went back to school? I mean, maybe that's what Bill's doing.
Belichick 8 months younger than Mac Brown. All right, everybody, here is the trivia question of the week. All right, here we go, friends. McKenzie Milton back as a UCF quarterback coach, obviously played here in 2017 for Scott Frost, a new head coach. So, gentlemen, here's your question. How many touchdown passes did McKenzie Milton throw in 2017, which obviously is a UCF record? How many touchdown passes did McKenzie Milton throw in 2017?
I'm gonna say, because otherwise we have dead silence here. We're live, Trace. I'm gonna go 40.
40. All right. 40 is the guess.
I'm going to play the Price is Right rules. I'm going to go
for sure.
39.
I guess Trace is closer to 37 is the correct answer. Obviously, it is the record for UCF. But friends, I have not gone just yet. Now we have audience questions, guys. I'll put these on the screen here. Here's your first one from JC Morning. When revenue sharing starts to come into effect, which non-revenue generating sports will be relegated to club status?
Softball, Elo. Softball.
I don't think so. You better think again. First of all, I'm not going to even address that question. It's an insane question. Because
is it implausible?
Non-revenue to club? I'll tell you
what. Is it implausible?
Well, no, obviously, I think that could come into play for a lot of schools, but I think, you're the one that hates these questions. Now you're going to answer?
I do hate the question.
They're going to be softball over my dead body. I'll tell you that right now. Problems. I'm going to say, I don't want to say a sport because then it's going to be. I will say this: women's basketball.
The headline will scream, "Elo comes out against
right
in the black."
I will say this: women's basketball in general is very lucky that they have to exist because of men's basketball. Because otherwise, I think a majority of schools would cut women's basketball. Maybe here.
Is that my question? I'm not sure. I'm just saying it's not implausible that it gets.
Give me an answer. No, give me an answer.
Title IX factors into this in a big way that they haven't worked through all of that.
Not a lot of programs have men's soccer either. If you other hand.
Well, and remember during the pandemic, Cincinnati dropped men's soccer.
Correct.
Next one.
Thanks a lot, Adam.
Terry Mahajer has plans to expand.
I don't ask these questions. I mean, these are audience participation.
We don't.
I have no control over this, but I do control this. Mario, Lonely Bumblebee, wants to know: did Terry cave to the donors to save his job with the Scott Frost hire? Trace, I'll start with you.
I do believe that the donors influence such decisions. I don't think it was to save his job, and I don't think it was a weak move. I think he flipped the script. I think Gus Malzahn handed him an opportunity, and I think, Scott Frost indicated that the moment came to him, and I think it all worked out together. But I do think donor influence cannot be discounted.
Donors have involvement in every football hire everywhere. So look at North Carolina, where they're about to give Bill Belichick $20 million for NIL and 30 more staff people for his coaching staff. I would say they had involvement there. I don't think Terry did it out of pressure or everything. I think you took a picture. I think donors wanted Frost. He listened. He talked to Frost. He went through the search, and he agreed with everybody that it was that's the move to go.
All right, last one. 30 seconds left here. Tyler wants to know, who are the realistic defensive coordinator candidates? Elo, I'll start with you.
There's a guy in Boise that looked pretty good against that vaunted UNLV offense.
How is that going to go over?
We won a national title with that. He's the national champion defensive coordinator. He did well with Boise. Boise's in the playoff. What playoff are we in?
You think that's going to go over with the fan base, though, Eric Chenander?
I don't think they would be shocked. I don't understand the hate for
He may
Jan.
perform a little better than the offensive coordinator.
Or who do you got? Who do you got?
I don't know. I don't work on lists. You're always the list guy. I don't have a list.
I just gave. You don't like giving names.
No, I've prepared no list. I had a busy day. There was no.
Well, how long were you? I mean, you know the show was on at 8 o'clock.
This is a live question. If I was in the mailbag, I would have done a little research.
Blame the audience.
Calm down, children.
All right, Elo, we're running low on time, so we're going to skip to props.
We're live. Who cares about time? Here's what I'm going to tell you.
I mean, you build it as the fastest show, so we're skipping ahead to the props. What was the prop last week, Elo? The before or after Saturday at 7. So the timing
was around 5:30.
But the official release didn't come out until after
Saturday night. Yeah, pretty good though, right? We're pretty close. Pretty close.
No,
I mean, if you go by the official, it was probably over. If it was under. You would have had it. All right, here's the one. Here's the next one for you. Over under UCF alums on the coaching staff for Frost, 2.5.
Under.
So you said so. That's it. The Milton
Becton,
yeah,
and Casey.
I'm going over.
What's your third?
I think Shaquem Griffin may have a role somewhere there on the staff. Maybe.
Ambassador is not on the coaching staff.
We do have a running back coach is available. Of a certain guy from Ole Miss, 24K. I'm just saying. I'm going to say somebody. I don't know what. I'm going to go the trace route, not answer which position. I'm just going to say there's a third guy, mystery guy.
Gotcha. I like it. So we should know maybe within a week or so, right? We'll get an answer maybe by the next Around the Kingdom if he keeps filling out the staff.
Maybe we will. So we skipped ahead to props. Does that mean we're going to men's hoops? Okay. Oh, by the way, there's another sport. I didn't know we had another sport going on. Men's basketball got a win over Tarleton before the Frost presser, by the way. What a doubleheader that was. They will take on Tulsa in Sunrise. Nothing said.
Tulsa?
Yeah.
I'm done with Tulsa. I don't understand the format of the Orange Bowl basketball classic with a one-off game against Tulsa. UCF needs to win that game, then one more at home before conference play begins. How comfortable are you with where this team is heading into conference play? Just 2 more games in the night.
Not very comfortable at all until I see Jalen Sellers on the court, dressed, playing, taking some shots. I still think we need him, Trace, when we get to Big 12 play to be competitive and be in that top 10 mix, which is what you're going to have to be in the conversation for the NCAA tournament. They didn't shoot the ball well against Tarleton, and we could talk about distractions and rusting. I still question, is this team a good shooting team without Sellers? We don't know.
Week to week between games, and we get day to day by Johnny Dawkins on Jalen Sellers. So not much of an update for several weeks. I don't know that he's coming back anytime soon. All right, time to bring back in Adam. What did we get right? What did we get wrong?
All right, here we go, gents. You guys talked about Gus Malzahn finished his tenure at UCF 28-24, the lowest winning percentage of any full-time head coach since Lou Saban in 1983-84. Gus had a 538. Lou Saban had a 333, the lowest winning percentage since 1984. Scott Frost was 16-31 in Nebraska, 5-22 in one-score games, which is not good. He's going to have to improve on that. We talked development since 2022. Only 3 NFL draft picks have come out of UCF. Under the Frost era, I count 8 draft picks in the NFL at that point in time. Do you guys know where the heck Tarleton is? Tarleton State?
Texas
is correct. I did not know that. And you mentioned Tulsa. We're playing them in basketball, but today they also stole our running back coach, Cam Martin, announced as the new associate head coach and running back coach for the vaunted Tulsa Golden Hurricane, or just Hurricane, I forget.
Hurricane,
all right,
singular.
Well, there's no hurricanes in Tulsa.
All right, thank you, Adam. One more thing before we go. Construction fences are up. Groundbreaking happening. The new Roth Tower expansion project inside the Bounce House signifies big changes coming, thanks in large part to $90 million in tourist development tax revenues from Orange County that are flowing into this project. Look for new episodes midweek, every week on the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. Also, downloads wherever you get your audio feed. Stay right there. We're going to pause and then restart for a live episode of Around the Kingdom Overtime for Eric Lopez and Adam Eaton. I'm Trace Trylko. Thanks for joining us for this live edition of Around the Kingdom. And we're back for Around the Kingdom Overtime, continuing the conversation, welcoming in Adam for extended chat with Elo and I. Back on Scott Frost. Adam, you and Mike mixed it up on the podcast this week, a couple of days into the week. How are your vibes about this Scott Frost hire, especially in light of Barry Odom to Purdue, Bill Belichick to North Carolina, and Rich Rodriguez returning to West Virginia? Did UCF finish the best of these hires?
That's a great question. I think relative to where we could have been, I think Terry Mahajer did about as well as he could, right? I mean, obviously we could not afford Barry Odom at $6 or $7 million. John Summerall, which I predicted, by the way, I did not think his candidacy was real anywhere. I think he wanted more money at Tulane. Looks like he got that. So I think UCF probably did about as well as they could do. The reality is this, guys, if you've got multiple head coaches and you're going down a list and you're trying to understand who's the best fit for your program, and you check a lot of boxes, and the one box you get to is passion and drive. Scott Frost is going to check that box every time, probably more so than any other candidate. So if all things are equal outside of that, you go with the guy who wants to be here. You go with the guy who wants to come back and rebuild some stuff. And so I'm good with Scott Frost. Would I have picked that hire 2 weeks ago? Probably not. But being where we are today, the excitement that's been generated, and listen, I don't know if this translates to wins on the field. I totally get that. But if you're a new head coach, you need support of your alumni. You need support of your donors. You need support of your fans. You need support of your former players. Any other coach would have came in here would have had to take some time to build that up. Scott Frost walked through the door with that. I hire people all the time for my real job, right? And I always tell my staff, there are two things when you hire somebody. There are things you buy with that person and things you develop. With Scott Frost, you bought culture. You bought the realization of what he could do. You bought the fact that he wants to be in this place. You have to develop that with somebody else. So he walked in the door with some advantages. Whether or not that translates to wins on the field, I have no clue. But coming in, I think he actually gained a bit of an advantage being the fact that it was here. So all that said, I'm good with Scott Frost being the 7th and 10th head coach for you.
7th and 10th. Elo, was there anything during the presser you didn't hear? Maybe something you expected to hear from Scott Frost or Terry Mahajer?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I think I maybe with Scott, he obviously did not talk about his past at that other place. I thought that was very interesting. He wouldn't reference Nebraska. So clearly there's some things there. I think with Terry, if anything, said more than I expected. I mean, he acknowledged that he had spoken to Scott Frost during a couple years ago to be the offense coordinator for Gus, which I know you two knew about it, but not many did publicly. So I was surprised that came out. And the fact that he admitted he talked to sitting head coaches. And I think that's the thing that I like from Terry's standpoint is I think we got a pretty good idea that he did kind of go through the whole search. We heard so many different names of different variety that we can't say he took shortcuts in this at all. And so I think from that standpoint, it was a good process. And I give him credit for that. But I think it's the opposite. I was surprised of what I heard more. He even acknowledged Trace and Adam that he kind of thought the Gus departure thing might take place a couple of weeks prior. Might be headed in that direction. I was not expecting to hear that.
Have you been to a presser like this that was a donor event as well? What did you think of the environment inside the venue?
Listen, outside of Adam, every big-time person from UCF was there. I mean, that was incredible.
Yeah.
It was a who's who.
I mean, Adam, you would have enjoyed it. Like, we could have probably done a live show from there, and it would have been the who's who. Like, it's the most biggest presser that I can remember, a UCF press conference. And I'm not talking about, like, the actual number of people, although there was a lot of them, but it's, like you said, Trace, there were so many important people, a lot of variations, different coaches. One of my favorite moments was one of the first coaches to hug Scott Frost, Johnny Dawkins. Very sincere, who obviously they two know each other so well, both being Danny White hires. I thought that was fascinating from that standpoint. And Scott taking photos with some of the alums and some of the fans afterwards. And it was fascinating to be at that event for sure. I'm still kind of surreal about it.
Adam, how did it play out on TV? Elo and I were in the room, and I've listened to clips that I recorded, but I haven't watched it on my TV, the production put together by UCF on ESPN+. How did it play to you?
I will answer that in a moment, but before I do that, breaking news, a graphic has just been drawn by UCF football. If I had showed you this graphic a year ago, both of you should have had me committed to a mental hospital. It is a Scott Frost and Bill Belichick graphic put out by UCF Football. If I had showed you this graphic a year ago, you would have had me committed to some hospital. Listen, on TV, look, it was interesting. I mean, they had a lot of shots, close-up shots of Scott Frost's wife, Ashley. So it was a lot of time focused on those two kind of sitting there.
Did they show him? I could see it, Elo. I don't know if you looked over there, but there were several times where he held on to her hand.
Did
they show that close
all
up?
They showed. Yeah, that's pretty much all they showed every time that the camera panned over to those two was them kind of holding hands. Scott very stone faced in a lot of his reaction. I thought the interesting moment, honestly, and kind of an awkward moment, was at one point Terry Mahajer looked at Scott Frost and said, "Yeah, I knew you were the guy. You know I was the guy too, right?" Right. Like he asked like 3 or 4 times, and Scott kind of awkwardly was like, "Yeah, I kind of."
Adam, that reminded me of Trace when he was negotiating with me about doing Around the Kingdom. He was like, "You like doing the show with me, right? You would want to do it, right?"
Yeah.
That's kind of the same.
No, I remember that meeting. It was.
And then I said it again the following week, and 2 months later, and you finally came around.
Yeah, that's true.
This was going to be Brian David Peterson's vehicle, but luckily Eric Lopez got in there. It played well. I mean, I think Scott did a really good job at the podium, as you both said. I thought it was interesting. A couple things. One, no notes. So that appeared to be off the top of his head, sort of just impromptu. We saw Terry Mahajer with some notes. Scott Frost, no notes. So that just came really kind of real and I guess raw. Maybe he had some things in his head he wanted to say, but either shows his intelligence, A, or his comfortability in front of a microphone, B, or his comfortability in his own skin, C. I thought that was interesting. Second part, he did not mention the word championship one time. The hallmark of every new coach press conference is we're going to compete for championships here. We're going to win championships here. That word was not said one time. And I thought it was very instructive that he kind of tried to kind of quiet the noise. And his first opening joke was, I hope people don't think we're going to go undefeated here. I thought he did a very nice job of trying to level set where we are. And third, he mentioned a few times, this is not the American Conference. You know, we're in the big boy leagues now. We're in the big boys. He said that a few different times. I think he was trying to set the table around. Do not expect what you saw in 2017 to happen again. And that there's a major rebuild that needs to happen with this program. And he's got to look at everything along those lines too. I thought that was much different than the initial 2015 Scott Frost press conference. And it played very well when you watched it on ESPN Plus.
Elo, do you care at this point what Scott Frost did or rather did not accomplish at Nebraska?
No, I don't care. I think they're two completely different worlds, two different jobs. I think one's not to do with the other. It's what he does from here moving forward with UCF.
Well, it's not instructive at all. It means nothing. No. I mean, because when we talk about luck and unluck, I mean, they lost a lot of close games. They lost a lot of games late.
So did Josh Heupel and Gus over here. I mean, that happened.
Does it make you question him at all, though? No. Can he be effective? Because, right, one of those talking points as he was being rumored for this is one winning season in his
but I think that's unfair because that obviously makes it sound like his first year at UCF was a bad one. And if you really look back,
it was a big turnaround from 0 to 6. Exactly. And they were decimated by injuries down the stretch. Weren't they 6-3 and then lost the last?
Yeah, they ran out of gas at the end. Milton struggled at the end.
The O-line was decimated. They didn't have bodies.
So I think that's unfair because it makes it sound like it was a bad year. But if you were there at the time, that was a good year considering where they have been. And honestly, they achieved more than people thought. People thought, well, maybe he could get a couple of wins, 3 wins. They won 6. So you got to, all records are not equal, as Nick Saban taught us this weekend on College Game Day. One thing Adam brought up, you know what was one of the loudest cheers in that presser, guys? I don't know if you picked up on this, Adam, on watching it, but I picked up on it. When Scott talked about, hey, I'm happy for these players that they're getting taken care of financially, paid and all that. But if we got a kid recruiting from Florida, we want to use our resources to keep that kid here. We're not going to build teams through the portal. That got a loud applause.
The 2025 roster.
Look, that sounded great on TV, Elo, but is that realistic?
No, but weren't you?
Who's left, Elo? The punter left. Who's left?
You act like he was very good.
I'm just saying, who's left? You need bodies.
Don't get bodies. I think the question
through the portal.
I think you can get a roster that can go 4-8 easily right now, very easily. The question is, can you get a roster that's better than that? And by the way, I want to get in this whole Cam Martin because a lot of people are mad that Cam, and I like Cam Martin for the record, nice guy. If he was such a great coach, why is he going to Tulsa? Why is he not going to Florida State? Why is he not going to another Power 4 school? By the way, can you both, where are all the talent that these coaching staff from Gus's staff or supposedly that we want to keep? Where is it? Where's the talent, the recruits? Where are they? So I don't want to hear people questioning why this guy didn't stay, whatever. They didn't get the job done at the end of the day here. I don't know. You guys you tell me I'm wrong on that, but I was a little surprised on some of the backlash on that situation there.
Yeah, I get it too, Eli. I kind of agree with you. I was talking to the group chat. This coaching staff was 10-15 over the last 2 seasons, right? I mean, as much as you may like them individually as coaches, as people, certainly something was not working from that perspective. Gus is gone. Obviously, you expect that as well. And so as much as I think Cam was an asset here, I think that he was obviously loved by his players and was vaunted to be a great recruiter. He was a 30 for 30 coach, top 30 coaches under 30, right? But Tulsa obviously is an interesting choice. But here's the reality, guys. We're a 4-8 football team. And I would tell you, I don't know if this is a hot take or if this is going to sound idiotic. So if it is, one of you two feel free to yell at me, right? We all agree that there needs to be a rebuild here at some point, right? If you're Scott Frost, isn't some of this actually better for you? Right, because you want to establish a new culture. He talked a little bit about, you mentioned this, Elo, discipline and accountability were the 2 words that he heard a lot. You need to establish a new culture. You need to establish something new. Getting rid of, and I don't mean it that way, but sort of getting some of the old regime out of here helps you get to that faster, right? So the more kids that hop in the portal, the more coaches that aren't around, kind of get Scott Frost there faster than maybe he would have done 5-10 years ago without the transfer portal. So as much as it's going to suck right now, and we're losing names like Randy Pittman and Cam Martin, and that stings a little bit, it may ultimately be one of those things where it's a short-term loss, long-term gain, where we have a rough year, but you reset the culture and you get a chance to start free. I don't know. Maybe that's idiotic.
No. I think you're 100% right. And that's why my point, when he said that about keeping the players and developing them and all that, that's why you got that loud cheer. I think a lot of people agree with that sentiment there, Adam. Let's be honest, guys. How many people really enjoyed this past year? Did you really enjoy watching this team? Were you connected to this team, Trace? You're there at every media availability as it is. Did you feel connected to any of this group, player-wise?
No, but that is a lot of the way in which Gus Malzahn controlled media availability. So you didn't really get to know guys very well.
I think hopefully that could change with Scott, because the first time Scott was around, people got connected to these players. You got to talk to the Adrian Killings. You got to talk to McKenzie Milton. So they had an automatic connection. Heck, you talked to the coordinators, and you didn't have to go to Sunday night to talk to them. You could talk to them Tuesday, Wednesday. It's crazy, but there's actually 5 days in a week that you could talk to coordinators before a football game. It's a crazy concept, I know.
Elo, I remember turning in media requests of players that I'd like to speak to, and those players would come into the field house for one-on-ones.
Wait, one-on-one interviews.
Cheap plug, this guy. We had Eric DeSalvo on the Suns pod with me and Mike on Monday, and he talked about under Frost, if you were in good standing, that they would go to the media and say, who do you want to talk to? And they would bring that player out for you, right? Everybody, as long as you're in good academic standing, you're a good standing on the team, that the PR, the SID at the time, I think he said it was Ortmeyer, you guys keep me honest on that one, would come out and say, who do you want to talk to?
Ormson.
And you would get that person. We have not seen that under Scott Frost. We all endured the Jason Johnson era.
When we talk about this nostalgia factor, we automatically go back to 2017, right? Elo, Adam, let's go back to 2015 and that first Frost. What were the expectations? 0-12, you expected to win some games. I don't think anybody was predicting 6 wins and a bowl game that season, right? And names we talk about now, Shaquem and Adrian Killins, those weren't beloved names in 2016. They became who we love over time. But going into the 2016 season, these were not beloved names. Adrian Killins makes a moment for himself with a big run at Michigan. It kind of really got into our consciousness. But these guys that we talk about now were not these guys in 2016. So there are guys waiting to emerge with the right development and the right culture that maybe Night Nation will fall in love with as early as 2025.
Well, that's why we like that season. Remember, coming off that 15 year, which was a miserable year, awful year, you were, my goodness, Trace, you were basically talking to yourself all year long, trying to break down each game there.
At another place.
At another place.
But now, Elo, I'm at this place. You're at that place.
That's correct. Yeah. Very well said. Touche. I think, but we enjoyed watching that 16 team. We enjoyed this freshman, Adrian Killings, run around. This freshman, McKenzie Milton, we started getting invested. And yes, listen, we're going to get frustrated, okay? We're going to get frustrated at times, like, oh, I don't know if this is working. But it was fun. And I think that could be next year. We might go 4-8 next year for all we know. But I think it'll be a more fun 4-8, more invested 4-8 than this year. Yes, part of that is expectations being lowered. But I also think people just want to see guys they can root for. And I think I'm not saying don't use the portal, but I don't think UCF is a place that you can just win with the portal only. You do have to develop some players at some point and play some of them. If that means you got to play freshmen and sophomores, do it to help them stay here. I think that's the way to go. It's a lot harder to build a team. Ask Florida State how going to the portal worked this past year.
To me, it's wild though, guys. If I had told you on January 1st, 2024, that there will be a point in time where the UCF fan base trusts Scott Frost more than Gus Malzahn. Imagine me telling you that 11 months ago, right? Scott Frost of the checkered shirt and of the recruiting database and of
I was never on the outs with Scott Frost.
I'm not saying you were, but there's a lot of people that were very off on all the things. And now we're here going, hey, we trust him. He's going to build a team. He's going to build a staff. We're going to get fun back. It's just a wild turn of events that a year ago, if I had told you, hey, we're going to trust Scott Frost more than Gus Malzahn, a guy who left us to go to another school, you all would have laughed us out of the room. But yet, here we are. But I think Eric brings up a good point. And I hate to use kind of that, that catchphrase, but Frost, I think for a lot of folks, they think he'll make UCF football fun again, right? It'll be fun to watch these teams. And part of the fun of 2016 was we knew we couldn't compete. We knew we were not a great football team, but we went out and we played fast. I was looking at earlier what you said, Trace. We were 6-4 heading into the final 3 weeks of the season. We were above 500, lost the last 3 of that year, obviously, to close 6-7. But it was fun. And because you're rooting for these young guys, Mike's saying it in the chat right here. He was not afraid to play freshmen. He was not afraid to develop freshmen. You got to know these players from the start. I think a lot of people are looking at that saying, this is going to make UCF football fun again. Whether that happens on the field or not, I have no idea. But I think that's the hopium, as Trace would say, that a lot of us are clinging on to right now.
And people will always, let me ask you both, don't you think fans will always be more attached to players they saw since their freshman days grow up versus, oh, here's a rental for a year? Not to say there aren't popular transfer guys, but I do think it's kind of like pro sports where people like Major League Baseball, people like guys that come up from the farm system, they'll always be more attached to them than a guy they just signed as a free agent. I think it's the same in college football.
The stars of tomorrow today. To paraphrase our friend J.P. Gilbert on a social media post, he contrasted what we saw from Scott Frost on Sunday night with what we have seen from Gus Malzahn. There was an authenticity, right? You saw it on display in the Gus Malzahn presser at Florida State, the same canned lines, right? There's an authenticity to Scott Frost, even if it is not the most open with members of the media. Adam, you said, he comes across as thoughtful, a reasonable, smart guy. I think that there's a connection to that as well in his demeanor.
He comes across very relatable, very every man-ish, right? Like you saw these videos of him in the, in the facility. He's got a baseball cap on, a t-shirt, a pair of joggers. He's giving guys hugs. Like I feel like you never saw a relaxed Gus Malzahn in that sense, right? Gus was always very buttoned up, very shirt collar button. Where Scott just is like, hey, I'm wearing a t-shirt and a hat from something that's not even UCF, by the way, and everyone loves it and everyone's all in on it. And he just seems like he's a down to earth, kind of normal, connective person. And I think there is something about that personality type that you feel like you're watching a normal average Joe coach your favorite football team. And I do think that will connect and has connected in the past and will connect with fans in the future where, Gus seemed very CEO-like, very much in front of the podium, we're going to do this, and it kind of walked off, where Frost seems like he's more connected to the fan base.
That might also help with players. If your coach is very
better, Elo, better.
Well, no, like if your coach is tense and kind of going all over the place and things, that might rub off not a good way from a player. Or if your coach is more relaxed, you're more comfortable to play because you know that you're not looking over your shoulder. That's another thing. Trace, I thought of you as I watched the Gus presser today, and I was thinking to myself, What would Trace want to ask us?
I was hoping you were there. I was hoping you were punking it out, Trace, and you had driven up there. No,
we would have been willing to do
I was driving, but I was not driving to Tallahassee at the time.
So what question would you have asked him if you were there?
Well, you know, what's interesting about that, Elo, and that is difficult to answer through the frame of having had conversations and questions of Gus Malzahn over the last number of years. People suggested tougher questions of Scott Frost, not at your opening presser, right? And so I think there's a certain grace afforded that new hire. I mean, I didn't hear a lot of hard-hitting questions. Did you in that presser? I would have liked to have barely really any mention of UCF. It was all of a bygone era of Auburn and Florida State and history. Not a lot of contemporary questions. If we're going to be a little more nitpicky, and it's through the prism of UCF lens, but I thought some member of the media might have asked him about development of KJ Jefferson, that whole situation, because it impacts them and where they're going at quarterback. And I didn't sense a lot of tough questions of him, just a lot of nostalgia questions of him from those that were assembled. So but again, I think they're afforded a certain grace that, you know, because there are questions that were not asked of Scott Frost that people are asking in chat rooms and message boards.
What question would you have wanted? What question would you have wanted to ask Scott then? Because obviously we won't get into it, but the presser obviously was a certain format, so it wasn't like freewheeling. You could just blow up a lot of questions. There was a process. We'll just call it as that. What question you wish would have been asked that didn't get asked?
Well, the format certainly played it, but again, I do subscribe to at that opening presser. You don't want to be the rain cloud, but I do think there are questions that should be asked of Scott Frost's tenure at Nebraska. I don't know that the play on the field is relevant to what we're experiencing, now and the landscape of college football. But, there are topics of his demeanor, behavior, and the like that are not that far removed. We're not that many years removed from, and how is he a different person? What is he bringing? Is there some baggage there? But it wasn't the forum for that. And quite honestly, I don't know when the next media availability. That's a question, Elo. When's the next media availability? I sense some media opportunity, but we're going to get into the holidays, and he's trying to assemble a staff, and I don't think it will be as long as the opening of spring camp. Hopefully, there will be some pressers to unveil, give OC and DC an opportunity to talk. Maybe next week for those, perhaps.
You hear that, everybody? Trace wants a presser next week. There you go. Adam, what question would you have asked? What question would you have asked if you were there?
You're talking about Scott Frost?
Yeah.
Yeah, he kind of sidestepped it. I think a little bit. I would have asked maybe more specifically. I forget who asked it, so I apologize. But kind of what I think maybe it was Chris Boyle. How are you different, or what have you learned? And I think I would have maybe pinned him down a little bit, like, hey, your last experience as a head coach did not go the way you wanted. What did you learn and take away from that you're going to do differently here? Like, I think I would have maybe tried to pin him down a little bit more specifically, just about like, what did you learn here that you're not going to do here? Now, I know he talked generally about it doesn't always work. Sometimes you fail. Sometimes it's the best lesson. But I would have liked to have known, like, what did you learn there that you wouldn't learn? A lot of people want this question that UCF Mike's asking. I'm afraid nobody asked it, though. Do you regret wearing the red checkered shirt? No.
Elo, what doesn't come across in the dynamics?
I guess not. Wow.
Elo, what doesn't come across in the dynamics of that room that just do not allow for some of these flippant questions?
Or are you talking about Sunday night or in general?
Yeah, Sunday night.
Yeah, I don't think people would have wanted that be brought up. People would have been person that would have asked that would have probably gotten booed, right? Like a boo, like
that feels like a tailor-made Mike Bianchi, though. No.
He got his. He got his.
He was already there. He might as well just gone all the way in at that point.
That's true. Good to see you, Mike. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. One of my favorite part, Trace missed this. So Matt Burchell, after the presser, goes up to Scott, and he's like, "I'm looking forward to covering you and all that, and maybe talk some Cubs." And Scott said, "Yeah, if they get some pieces, well, yeah, maybe, because they need to." So he's not happy about the Cubs. Trace, you got your Cubs, a fellow Cub. You got to ask about the Cubs at some point, aren't you?
We'll connect on the Cubs.
There we go. Adam, get ready for that. We might have
UCF Mike and George have the Yankees. Trace and Scott Frost have the Cubs.
He's going to have to fight with Matt Burchell. I didn't know Burchell was a Cubs fan. Did you know that?
Yes. Well, he's from Indiana. So, yeah. Adam, the offensive coordinator, all the talk, the buzz. So Scott
Yes.
Frost was a Sunday into Monday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday story. KZ became the Tuesday story. The Wednesday story is the offensive coordinator, and a little grumbles from Night Nation about not being wowed by the hire. Is the resume concern you? Because you're elevating an offensive analyst in McKenzie Milton to quarterbacks coach. Do you want a more seasoned OC?
I was surprised he did not go with a more seasoned offensive coordinator, considering his connections. But I also have no clue, and neither does anybody out here, whether any of these people can actually coach. Like that's the reality. We have no idea if this guy can be an offensive coordinator or not. We were talking a lot about in the UCF search, Andy Kotelnicki, who had been a popular name. He was at like some D2 school before he got to Kansas. Like no one would have said this is the greatest offensive mind I've ever seen. Now he's turning down jobs to stay at a Power 5. So I have no idea. I understand why it's underwhelming, because you hoped that maybe a bigger name, somebody with some more success on the resume and pedigree. Boy, he's having a great year. I'm curious to understand what his role was, but they're obviously in the college football playoff. They have a first round bye, which is not easy to get. I'm sure he's played some role in the passing attack. So it was a little underwhelming, but I'm also not going to freak out because I have no idea if this guy's calling plays. I have no idea what his role in the staff is going to be. And at this point, I think Scott's just trying to assemble a group of individuals that he thinks can support this team the best. But here's the other thing that people get mad a lot about. And I challenge anyone out there to think about this. I've had to do this a few times in my career. I'm sure many have as well. You get a new job and you've got to staff a team. Who do you call? You call the people you know and the people you trust. Right, you don't call.
Well, but Gus Malzahn was blasted for doing that same thing. But that's just the way this works.
But again, that's where we trust Scott Frost all of a sudden way more than Gus Malzahn, which again is a wild turn of events. But
because the guys that were here it won. That's why. That's
correct.
The difference.
Because we've seen that be successful, and so I'm gonna let it play out. Was I underwhelmed? Sure. Was I like who? Did I have to do a Wikipedia search and find out if this guy's a
we
real
said
coach?
We said the same thing about Ryan Held as the running back coach back in the day. Remember that? Right? Who's Ryan Held? Why are we getting Ryan Held? Troy Walters was the offensive coordinator. Eric Chenander was it wasn't like these guys were like big names. I get it. You're in a Power 4. You're thinking some names, but I never thought that he would get a big name offensive coordinator because I just felt that Scott's going to call plays.
But see, you're talking about trust here. Scott needs to trust his hires.
Yeah, I guess big names relatively, like, and maybe big resume or up and coming resume. There was the analyst for the Rams, the passing game coordinator. I think Ryan Steele chases his name. His name had been mentioned, right? I think that had been a name that had moved people. But if there's one knock on Scott Frost in Nebraska, I don't know if you guys agree with this or not, but a lot of the knock on him, and again, I've had this week to talk to some of his former coaches a little bit and kind of get some insight on that. The knock on him as he went to Nebraska was the staff he brought wasn't ready for that level. He brought the UCF staff with him to Nebraska, and that staff wasn't ready to coach in the Big Ten at that point in time. And obviously at some point, Scott had to jettison a lot of those guys. I think some things turned ugly and there's some hurt feelings still in a lot of those relationships. So that's the one knock he had on Nebraska, is maybe he, to Gus Malzahn, esque, was a little bit too reliant on his guys, and he had to jettison a lot of those guys to try to save his job at the end. So I think about that now at UCF. Is he doing the same?
But how do you know a coach can't succeed at a certain level? Like, all the Gus guys were all Power 4 experience. That didn't work out here. Like, I don't know. I think we tend to kind of microscope all that and then play the hindsight 2020. Well, in hindsight, it didn't work out. Nobody at the time was questioning Scott making those moves when he went to Nebraska.
Well, I will say, allegedly, Nebraska was willing to let Frost take his entire staff with him, where other schools that wanted Scott at that point were not. Allegedly.
Sure.
So do with that what you will. The Floors of the world were like, hey, you're not bringing your entire staff with you. And that was a stipulation I think Scott had at 2017 about.
Sure, he was being loyal. He was being loyal to his staff, maybe too loyal to a fault, it turns out. But again, if Trace mentioned it on the show, if Scott wins more of those one-score games, are we having this conversation? Probably not. I mean, it's all a big script. I got to give credit to Mike. He made a great name, Travis Fisher. Trace, we were talking about who could be on the staff that's a UCF. Travis Fisher.
That could take you to 3.
That would get me the win. He did a great job here at UCF. Adam, you might know this from talking to all the coaches. It was Travis Fisher that gave the idea to Chenander and Frost about how to use Shaquem Griffin. So but will he leave? Is he willing to leave Syracuse to come back home? I don't know. That's one to watch. Good call, Mike, on that one.
All right, let's wrap up with this. Winners and losers in this from Gus Malzahn's last game all the way through the hire. Who are some winners and losers as this story played
Us,
out?
all of us, all of the media, all the people that depend for UCF content are big winners. Are you kidding me? Considering what we were headed for, I mean, it might have been so bad. Trace, we might have had to do multiple women's basketball segments.
We'd still have gone live every no.
Definitely. You know, would you have gone live for Barry Odom?
One show,
or
not 2 weeks,
or the Karnacki, the Penn State coordinator, Karnacki.
Nikki. The good news is there's like 9 new podcasts and everyone's going live now, so your content's covered. I think the losers, Elo, I kind of feel bad for the current staff. I mean, they're out there recruiting. They're out there trying to get the recruiting class in. They don't know what their future holds. They don't know if they're sticking with Frost, if they're going with Malzahn, if they're going someplace else. I do feel bad for those guys who were still sticking it out, trying to right the ship here, not knowing what their future is held. And again, we talked about Cam Martin on Around the Kingdom regular. But the other reality is there was a lot of unknowns with this staff, right? What's going to happen? And there's some respect of saying, if I've got a solid concrete job offer at a price that I like, why would I not take that now? Because I don't know what I've got here in front of me. So I think the losers, unfortunately, turn out to be the current staff who, by all accounts, while maybe there were some missteps here and there and there wasn't the right collective together, I think they tried to do the right thing for UCF.
Agreed. No, that's very well said.
I'd throw a winner out there are those kids that committed to a school without a known head coach. In this era, there was a leap of faith there, and I do think that speaks a bit to culture. While we're giving out winners, how about Brandon Helwig joined us during the Sunday
He's a winner
edition. He covered the story, every turn of it with information to his rivals crowd. And I think I won't name names, but I think the losers are people that broke information that proved to be inaccurate. And I think you need to reassess your scorecard on who you trust in the media and who you shouldn't.
I think the fan base overall, right? They're going to renew season tickets, winners, right? I don't think they would have been excited if it was another coach.
There is not one other hire, right? That would have been exciting. How would
Bill Belichick? Imagine what if we would have had Bill? What if we hired Bill Belichick? How would we feel about that right now? If you had Bill Belichick,
no.
Right? I think the only other hire that would have done this would have been Dion.
I 100% agree.
Outside of that, I don't know that any other hire would have really moved the needle this way. Again, I think you could have gotten there, but again, Scott Frost walked in with that cachet already.
Let me. You know what's the winner too? UCF's budget. Trace, we talked about this. They didn't have to pay Gus a buyout for him to depart. They didn't have to pay the new head coach a buyout to get out of another place. That's the thing. Frost was a freebie. I'm sure Sean McVay was like, cool, whatever. By the way, Sean McVay, big winner. How many times did he get referenced in the Sunday presser? I mean, Mahajer was the most excited talking about Sean McVay.
Listen, I know a guy who wants an NFL job when I see one. Mike's got another good one here. Florida State, biggest loser.
Well, no. You know who's a winner? I mean, the winner there is Herb Hand. He probably got more money to go to FSU, brother. Herb's going to be fine.
Our bias aside, how did Gus? And I was driving, so I was just listening to it. How did Gus play today?
I think it was fun. I think the UCF thing.
Is it a winner? Are there shows that are live right now calling it a winner?
Actually, yeah. You know, it's funny. I'm not even joking. War Chant did a live show breaking down the Gus presser. Yeah. So it's kind of, and they also had the defensive coordinator who came from Nebraska. It's a small world. I will say this. I know we're all negative on Gus and how things played out here. I don't think he's a bad guy. This might actually work for Florida State. I'm going to be real. I know some people are skeptical. Him just calling plays. He talked about he just wants to be a football coach. I actually do believe him in that. I think he just wanted to call plays and be a coach. I don't think he likes the other stuff that's come with the sport, with the NIL. And I think him just focused on running the offense might actually work and might be good for him. And it might be good for Mike Norvell and Florida State. They will run the football. That's the one thing. We were a top 10 run offense with Gus there. He'll produce offense. Is it good enough to save Mike Norvell long-term? Who knows? But I actually think this could work out for everybody. I really do.
Trace, it gave me shades of Stockholm syndrome because I heard him and I was like, oh, they're going to run fast. They're going to do this stuff. And I remember being that guy in 2021 at the press conference and Auburn fans telling us, whoa, you all better calm down. And we weren't hearing it. We were not hearing it. And I feel like we're back in that same position.
Well, the weird thing is he might have Thomas Castellanos. He might reunite with him. Apparently, that's who they're going after, the quarterback. How would you react there? Thomas Castellanos. You talk about the what if. You might see that if Thomas Castellanos is the quarterback for Gus's offense.
That's
Gus
wild.
is going to need to get QB1 right, as is Scott Frost. And we have an entire offseason of shows to talk about all those sorts of things. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us for Around the Kingdom Overtime. For Adam Eaton, Eric Lopez, I'm Trylko. Go Knights.
Charge on?
We're on the charge on.
We're on the charge. Okay.